The Almighty Alliance started with the Simon City Royals, Northside Insane Popes, Imperial Gangsters, and Latin Eagles. The Popes have been using the Almighty moniker since at least the 1960s. The Royals have been using Almighties since at least the 1980s. I wouldn't be surprised if the Almighty Alliance began in 1979, which was the same year the Insanes and the Maniacs formed. Almighty is a term that has been used throughout time by both folk and people nation gangs even before folk or people even existed. Back in the 1970s, the terms really started to surface as several gangs used the terms Almighty that included Simon City Royals, Insane Popes, and Latin Eagles. By 1992, the Almighty Alliance was for sure in full swing as a three-way agreement to disagree started on the streets between Northside folks. The Simon City Royals, Northside Insane Popes, Imperial Gangsters, and Latin Eagles were the four original gangs that created this alliance and were all that was a part of it at this time. In the late 1980s, the Imperial Gangsters began calling themselves Almighty Imperial Gangsters but had no relation to Eagles, Popes, and Royals. The Imperial Gangsters and Latin Eagles just hung out with Insanes and Maniacs until war kicked off between Eagles and Cobras in 1989 and MLDs and Imperial Gangsters the same year. In the year 1992, the Maniac and Insane families became official, and this left the Royals, Popes, Eagles, and Imperial Gangsters out of all this. The Royals were starting to get into it with Cobras, and the Imperial Gangsters were getting into it with Insanes and MLDs, so there was no fit for them in either family. The problem was it meant both families rode against them all for the next 3 years. The Almighties had been having increased conflicts with Insane and Maniacs between the years of 1989 and 1992, followed by periods of peace. By 1992, the peace was much harder to keep, and these three organizations had their own division. The Latin Lovers petitioned to join the alliance, but Imperial Gangsters objected and the Lovers joined Insane instead. In the year 1995, the Harrison Gents joined the Almighties after they had a falling out with the Insanes, and ever since then the Almighties have had the same set 5 gangs. All are allied and all will take up arms alongside each other against the Maniacs, Insanes, and any people nation gangs. The Almighty family gangs do not operate as closely as Insanes and Maniacs. These organizations often handle business on their own.